Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the exemplar questions for the chapter ecosystem. This is the part 2 of the session. Okay, so we have discussed some of the questions in the previous session and today we'll be discussing the rest of the questions in this session. This is the disclaimer. So let's understand the objectives of today's session. So today we will be understanding the basic concepts related to the chapter ecosystem. So these questions, they are based on some concepts. We'll discuss these concepts by discussing NCERT exemplar questions. So these questions have been divided into these following categories. So we have multiple choice questions, very short answer type question, short answer type questions, and long answer type questions. Okay, let's begin with the multiple choice questions. So first question is, during the process of ecological succession, the changes that take place in communities are. So this topic is basically based on, this question is based on the topic ecological succession. So you have the option orderly and sequential, random, okay, very quick, and the last option is not influenced by the physical environment. So what will be the correct answer? Let's have a look at the answer. So option number A, orderly and sequential, is the correct answer. Let's have a look at the explanation. Now, ecological succession involves gradual and predictable changes in the species composition of an area. This means that over time, the types of plants and animals in a community will change in a way that we can often anticipate. Now, these changes are orderly and sequential. So, this is important because it highlights that succession follows a specific pattern. So orderly and sequential means the ecological succession is following a specific pattern rather than happening randomly. Each stage sets the stage for next, creating a predictable sequence. Now the term SARE refers to the entire sequence of community that change over time in a given area. Now it's crucial to understand that ecological succession is not characterized by random or quick changes. Instead, it unfolds over time in a structured manner. Also, the ecological succession is influenced by physical environment, thus all the other options are wrong. Let's have a look at the next question. So, climate's community is in the state of. What are the options? Non-equilibrium, equilibrium, disorder, and constant change. What will be the correct answer? Here, the correct answer is option number B, equilibrium. Now, during ecological succession or biotic succession, the climate's community is stable, self-perpetuating, and is the final biotic community. So climax community is the final stage of this process. It's stable and self-sustaining, meaning it does not change much over time. Now the climax community is in perfect harmony and the equilibrium with its physical environment. This means that all the living organisms and non-living elements are balanced. Now, climax community has maximum diversity and niche specialization, meaning that each species has a specific role in the ecosystem. So, climax community's balance and specialization makes it unique and resilient. Next question: among the following biogeochemical cycles, which one does not have losses due to respiration? So, what are the options? Option number A is phosphorus, B is nitrogen, C is sulfur, and D is all of these. What will be the correct answer? Option number D, all of these is the correct answer. Let's have a look at the explanation. So respiration is the process where living organism use to release energy from the food. So in respiration, the respiratory substrate are broken down with the help of oxygen or in the presence of oxygen, and energy is released. Okay, so respiration involves the exchange of gases, primarily oxygen being taken in and carbon dioxide being released. So organisms, both plants and animals, need to take in oxygen from the surrounding air or water. This oxygen is then used in the cells to break down the food molecules to produce energy. And as a result of this process, a waste gas, carbon dioxide, is being produced and it is released back into the environment. Now, phosphorus, nitrogen, and sulfur are not directly involved in this gas exchange. So they do not experience losses due to respiration. So unlike oxygen and carbon dioxide, which are gases exchanged during respiration, elements like phosphorus, nitrogen, and sulfur are not involved in the gaseous exchange that occurs during this process. Next question is also based on ecological succession. So the sequence of communities of primary succession in water is. So what are the options? You have 4 options. You have to select the correct answer from these options. Okay. So what is the correct sequence? Okay, sequence of communities of primary succession in water means they are talking about the aquatic ecosystem here. Let's have a look at the answer. See, option number D is the correct answer here. Let's have a look at the explanation. See, a hydrosphere is the step-by-step change of an ecosystem that begins in a brand new body of water, like pond or a lake. The very first organism to arrive and grow are microscopic floating algae called the phytoplankton. Now, these tiny photosynthesizing creatures are the pioneers, arriving in the new nutrient-poor water and beginning the process of building up the organic matter. So primary succession in water is known as the hydrosphere. It starts with phytoplankton, which are the microscopic algae. They are tiny plant-like organisms. They can carry out the process of photosynthesis. So phytoplankton, they first colonize the new water bodies. So they are the pioneer species. Now as the phytoplankton grow and then they die and they decay, they remain settled on the bottom, mixing with the silt to create mud. This allows the next stage of plants to take. Okay, so now the next stage of plants will appear. Now first of all, first comes the submerged hydrophytes, which are rooted plants that live completely underwater. As the water body continues to fill with sediments, the water becomes shallow. This allows floating hydrophytes, which have leaves that float on the surface, to take over. With continued sedimentation and accumulation of organic matter, the water body becomes even shallower. This gives rise to reed swamp stage, where tall emergent plants grow. This is then followed by a sedge meadow stage, where the ground is wet and marshy, but no longer has standing water. Eventually, the land becomes drier, allowing shrubs and trees to take hold on. If the climate permits, a climax forest to form. Okay, clear? So after submerged hydrophytes, next will be reed swamp stage, followed by sedges, meadow, and finally trees. Next question, if the carbon atoms fixed by producers already have passed through 3 species, the trophic level of the last species would be. So options are scavenger, tertiary producer, tertiary consumer, and secondary consumer. What will be the correct answer? Option number C, tertiary consumer, is the correct answer. Now here you can see, let's begin with the producers, which is at the first trophic level. Then you have the primary consumer, which eats the producers. So primary consumer will be herbivores. Okay, so they will occupy the second trophic level. Then are the secondary consumer, which eats the primary consumers. So they will occupy the third trophic level, so they will be carnivores. Finally, tertiary consumers, which eats the secondary consumers, they will occupy the fourth trophic level. So you can see energy is flowing from the producers to the consumers. So energy flow is unidirectional. Let's discuss about scavengers. So scavengers, like vultures, they are detrivores that feed on dead animals. They play a crucial role in ecosystem by breaking down dead matter, but they do not contribute to carbon fixation. Okay, so producers, they can carry out photosynthesis, and by this process they can fix carbon dioxide present in the air. Okay, and you can see producers, they produce biomass, they produce energy which is passed through the different trophic levels. Next question is edaphic factors refers to. So what are the options? Option number A is water, second is soil, third is relative humidity, fourth is altitude. So what will be the correct answer? Option number B, soil, is the correct answer. Now edaphic factors are related to the soil, including aspects like soil texture, mineral content, topography and pH value. Now these characteristics of the soil play a crucial role in determining the type of plants that can grow in an area, which in turn affects the entire ecosystem. Let's consider other abiotic components of the ecosystem such as water, relative humidity and altitude. Now, these factors influence the climate and are therefore categorized as climatic factors. It is very important to distinguish between edaphic and the climatic factors because they affect ecosystem in different ways. For example, while soil provides nutrients, climatic factors like humidity and altitude influence temperature and weather patterns. Variation in edaphic and climatic factors lead to different types of ecosystems around the world. For instance, a desert ecosystem has very different soil and climate conditions compared to a rainforest. Understanding these factors help us appreciate the diversity of life on Earth and the delicate balance that sustains it. Next, we have very short answer type questions. So, question is, what is the ultimate source of energy for the ecosystem? Let's have a look at the answer. So for the vast majority of ecosystem, including forests, grassland and oceans, the energy begins with the sunlight. Now producers like plants and algae capture this solar energy through photosynthesis and convert it into a usable chemical form like glucose. Means the sunlight is being captured and the light energy is being converted into food, you can say. This energy then flows through the food chain to all the other organisms. In the deep oceans, there are ecosystems built around hydrothermal vents because in the ocean the light cannot penetrate. Now these hydrothermal vents release superheated mineral-rich water from the Earth's core. Now because no sunlight can reach these depths, the organisms that live there cannot rely on photosynthesis. So they gain energy from this superheated mineral-rich water. Next question is the common edible mushroom an autotroph or a heterotroph? Let's have a look at the answer. See, the common edible mushroom known scientifically as Agaricus is achlorophyllous, meaning it does not have chlorophyll. So that's why it cannot perform photosynthesis and must obtain its nutrients by consuming organic matter, making it as a heterotroph. Next question, why are oceans least productive? Let's have a look at the answer. See, oceans are least productive because, see, the sunlight decreases as we go deeper into the oceans. Okay, so sunlight cannot penetrate such depths of the ocean. Now, this lack of light limits the photosynthesis, which is crucial for plant growth. The second reason is that oceans are nitrogen deficient. Nitrogen is a vital nutrient for plant growth. Okay, so you can see the nitrogen is deficient in nitrogen and other minerals also. Okay, and there is no mixing of water also. Okay, that's why most of these minerals, they settle down and they are not available for the aquatic plants as well as the animals. Now next is the high salinity of ocean water. So high salt levels can be harsh for many plants. Okay, so this salinity creates an environment where only certain plants can survive. Another factor is the lack of substratum or a solid surface to support plant life. Okay, clear? So without substratum, it is very difficult to support the plants. Without soil, it's challenging for plants to anchor and grow without a stable base. Because usually what terrestrial plants do, they absorb all the nutrients, all the minerals from the soil. Here there is no substratum for the plants to grow. So they just have to absorb the minerals which are present in the water. Next question is, why is the rate of assimilation of energy at the herbivore level called secondary productivity? So there are two kinds of productivity, primary productivity and secondary productivity. Here we are talking about the secondary productivity. Let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so the assimilation of energy by herbivores is termed secondary productivity because, now primary productivity is the creation of biomass by the producers like plants using the sunlight. When a herbivore eats the plant, it consumes the primary biomass. So secondary productivity is the rate at which that consumer then converts the energy from the consumed plant matter into its own biomass. This process is called secondary because it is an act of creation by a consumer, not by a producer. Okay, so basically what will be the definition of secondary productivity? It is the rate of formation of new organic matter by the consumers. So primary productivity is related to producer, secondary productivity is related to the consumer. Here the consumers, they are forming new organic matter by feeding on the producers. Okay, so it is a rate of formation of new organic matter by consumers building on the energy initially captured and produced by the primary producers, which are the plants, through primary productivity. Now, in an ecosystem, herbivores are the primary consumers because they eat the producers. After consuming the plants, they assimilate the energy from that plant matter and use it for their own needs such as growth and reproduction. The new biomass they produce, whether in their own bodies or in the new offerings, is what is then available to the next trophic level like carnivores. So this new biomass represents the secondary productivity of the ecosystem. Now let's have a look at the next question. So question is, give any two examples of hierarch succession. Let's have a look at the answer. See, Xerox succession of ecological communities originate in extremely dry conditions. Xerox succession means which is occurring in the xeric conditions, dry conditions. Okay. Examples are sand desert and rock deserts. So because there is no water and the substratum does not absorb rainwater. So these are the two examples of Xerox succession. You can see this kind of succession in the sand desert and the rock deserts. Next question is define self-sustainability. Okay, let's have a look at the answer. See, self-sustainability refers to the ability of an ecosystem to maintain itself naturally. This means that the ecosystem has all the necessary components and processes in place to support life without needing outside help. Now, self-sustainable ecosystem is one that can maintain itself through its own independent efforts. This means that the interactions between organism and the environment are balanced and efficient. For example, in a forest, trees provide oxygen and habitat, while animals contribute to nutrient cycling, creating a self-sustainable loop. This balance is crucial for the long-term health of the ecosystem. Next one, give below is a figure of an ecosystem. Answer the following questions. First one, what type of ecosystem is shown in the figure? And name any plant that is characteristic of such ecosystems. Let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so the ecosystem shown in the figure is a tropical deciduous forest ecosystem. These forests are known for their seasonal shedding of leaves, which is an adaptation to conserve water during dry periods. This type of ecosystem is crucial for maintaining biodiversity and supporting various forms of life. Moving on to the next part of the question. Now in India, tropical deciduous forests are characterized by plants such as Tectona, Dipterocarpus, Jamun amla, Pallas, Mathua, and Samuel. These plants are well adapted to the climatic conditions of these forests. Okay, understanding the plant species help us to appreciate the ecological balance and the role each species plays in the ecosystem. Now, next question is, what is common to earthworm, mushroom, soil mites, and dung beetle in an ecosystem? Let's have a look at the answer. So these organisms are all primary consumers in a detritus food chain and they are known as detritivores. This means they feed on dead organic matter and they help to break the organic matter and recycle nutrients back into the ecosystem. Okay, so all of these, they are the primary consumers. Okay, this is clear. Now let's see here. Earthworms, these organisms are found in the soil and play a crucial role in decomposition. They break down organic matter enriching the soil, and then mushrooms, they are the fungi, they are the saprophytes. Okay, they feed on dead and decaying organic matter. Now soil mites, these tiny creatures also inhabit the soil and assist in breaking down organic matter. Then dung beetles, these insects primarily feed on dung, which is organic waste, and help in its decomposition. Next question is, in relation to energy transfer in ecosystem, explain the statement 10 kg of deer's meat is equivalent to 1 kg of lion's flesh. Let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so this statement illustrates the 10% law of energy transfer, a fundamental principle in ecology. So it shows that the transfer of energy from one trophic level to the next is extremely inefficient. Okay, only 10% of the energy is transferred to the next higher trophic level, and almost 90% of the energy is lost in the form of heat. So according to 10% law, only about 10% of the energy from one trophic level is passed on to the next trophic level. Now, so what happens to the other 90% of the energy? A large portion is lost as heat, a byproduct of organism metabolic processes. Now you can see a lion must consume approximately 10 kg of deer meat to produce just 1 kg of its own biomass, as only a small fraction of the energy from the deer is successfully converted into the lion's flesh. Next question is, they are short answer type questions. So question is, what is an incomplete ecosystem? Explain with the help of suitable examples. Let's have a look at the answer. Now an ecosystem needs certain parts to function properly on its own. It requires living things, which are the biotic components such as producers, consumers and decomposers, and non-living things, which are the abiotic components like water, air and light. When one or more of these essential parts are missing, the ecosystem is considered incomplete and cannot sustain itself without outside help. A typical household aquarium is a perfect example of an incomplete ecosystem. An aquarium has all the components necessary for a basic food chain. Okay, it is a man-made ecosystem, it is artificial ecosystem. The plant, they act as a producers using light to create oxygen and food. The fish, which are the consumers, eat the plant or other food that is added to the tank. Okay, so this is where the basic cycling of nutrients begin, but it cannot be completed on its own. In a natural ecosystem, decomposers like bacteria and fungi are abundant and essential. They break down dead organic matter and waste into simple nutrients that can be reused by the producers. In an aquarium, this decomposer community is often not large enough to keep up with the waste produced by the fish, or organic matter produced by the fish, or the waste also produced by the fish. This leads to a buildup of waste and toxins that cannot be naturally processed. So in aquarium, the water needs to be replaced, okay, after some time. Otherwise, these waste and toxins, they build up in this water, and this can be harmful for the plants and the fishes in the aquarium. Now, because the natural nutrient cycling is incomplete, this aquarium relies on human intervention to stay clean and healthy. You have to regularly change the water and use a filter, which is an artificial substitute for the missing decomposers. Without the external help, the waste would accumulate, making the water toxic and killing the fish. Next question is, how do you distinguish between humification and mineralization? Okay, these are the two steps of decomposition. Let's have a look at the answer. See, humification is the process of formation of humus. Okay, so in humification, what happens? It is the process where dead organic matter is partially decomposed by microbes to form humus, which is a dark amorphous substance that is resistant to further decay. So humus, actually, it is resistant to microbial decay. It decays very slowly. That's why it maintains the fertility of the soil, because it is a reservoir of the nutrients. So it is decaying very slowly. So it maintains the soil fertility. In contrast, mineralization is a subsequent process occurring after humification, where the humus is fully broken down by microorganisms to release inorganic nutrients like nitrates and phosphorus into the soil. Okay, making them available for the plants to absorb. Now, the key difference between these two processes lies in their end result. Humification is about building up and stabilizing the organic matter in the soil by creating humus. Mineralization, on the other hand, is about breaking down that stabilized organic matter to release the fundamental mineral nutrients that plant and other organisms need to grow. Let's have a look at the next question. So you have to fill in the trophic levels 1, 2, 3 and 4 in the boxes provided in the figure. Let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so let's examine the first trophic level, which consists of producers. So these are primary plants that convert sunlight into energy through photosynthesis. They form the base of the food chain, providing energy for all other levels. Now let's move on to the second trophic level, which includes primary consumers. So these are herbivores that eat plants to gain energy. You can think of animals like rabbits and deer that rely on plants for their nutrition. Now third trophic level consisting of secondary consumers. So these are carnivores that eat herbivores. For example, a fox that preys on rabbits fits into this category. So this level highlights the predator-prey relationship and how energy continues to flow through the ecosystem. Finally, let's look at the fourth trophic level, which includes tertiary consumers or top carnivores. These animals, like eagles or wolves, are at the top of the food chain and have few natural predators. Okay, here is a complete image. You can see the first trophic level, they are occupied by the producers. Second trophic level, they are occupied by the primary consumers, which are basically herbivores. Then the third trophic level, this is occupied by the secondary consumers, which are the carnivores. And then again the fourth trophic level, this is occupied by the tertiary consumer, they are the top carnivores. And also you can see at each step the energy is being lost in the form of heat. Okay, only 10% of the energy is transferred to the next higher trophic level. Now we have long answer type questions. The question is, what will happen to an ecosystem if all producers are removed, all organisms of herbivore level are eliminated, and all top carnivores population is removed? So what will happen to the ecosystem? Let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so first one, let's have a look at the first one. So producers like plants are the foundation of almost all ecosystem, converting energy primarily from the sun into organic matter through photosynthesis. Without producers, there is no initial source of energy or food or biomass to support herbivores, which are the primary consumers, and then carnivores, which are the secondary and the tertiary consumers, or omnivores. So this would lead to a collapse of the entire food web, causing widespread starvation and the eventual demise of most animal populations in the ecosystem. Because ultimately these, you can say, herbivores and carnivores, they are dependent on the plants. Herbivore, they are directly dependent on the plants, and carnivore, they are indirectly dependent on the plants, which are the producers. The next one, the absence of herbivores would remove the primary pressure on the plant population, because herbivores, they feed on the plants. So this will lead to an increase in the plant growth and biomass. But carnivores, they depend on the herbivores as their food source, and they will face starvation, and consequently their population would decline and potentially become extinct. Now third one is removal of top carnivores. Okay, now without the top carnivores, the population of their prey, which are the herbivores, would increase dramatically. So this surge in herbivore numbers would lead to overgrazing, where the animals consume plant at a faster rate than they can regenerate, damaging the vegetation. So you can see if the number of herbivores increase, then it can lead to overgrazing. Okay, so no plants will be left. Means there will be very little producers. So the ecosystem will collapse again. Okay, clear? So now animals are consuming these plants at a very fast rate, and the plants are not able to regenerate themselves. So ultimately the ecosystem will again collapse. Next question is, give two examples of artificial or man-made ecosystem. You have to list the salient features by which they differ from natural ecosystem. Let's have a look at the answer. Now, artificial ecosystem. So these environments such as aquariums and farmhouses, these are example of artificial ecosystem or man-made ecosystem. They require human intervention to sustain their biotic and abiotic components. Okay, so they require activities like cleaning, feeding, and supplying oxygen. Now, let's talk about the natural ecosystem. These ecosystems are self-sustaining, meaning they maintain their nutrient cycles and ecological processes without human help. This is the key difference from artificial ecosystem, as natural ones rely on their own internal mechanism to thrive. Let's talk about ecological services provided by natural ecosystem. Now, these include soil conservation, pollution control, and climate regulation, all occurring without human assistance. These services highlight the importance of natural ecosystem in maintaining environmental balance. Okay, so ecosystem provide a lot of services, ecological services. It helps in soil conservation. It helps in the control of the pollution, because these plants, they absorb the atmospheric carbon dioxide. They clean up the air. Okay, they are also involved in climate regulation. Now, next question, the biodiversity increases when one moves from the pioneer to the climax stage. What would be the explanation? Let's have a look at the answer. Now, biodiversity increases during ecological succession. This means that as an ecosystem matures, it supports a wider range of species. Now, changes in vegetation not only provide new food sources, but also create new shelters for animals. So this leads to change in the numbers and types of plants, animals, and decomposers. Now consider how natural or human disturbances such as fire or deforestation can set back succession to earlier stages. So this is important because it shows how fragile ecosystem can be and how they can be reset, impacting biodiversity. Now, let's talk about how disturbances in an ecosystem can create new conditions. So these changes can encourage some species to thrive while others may diminish. Yes, so also such disturbances can create new conditions that encourage some species and discourage or eliminate other species of producer, consumers, and decomposers. Now, moving on, we see that over time, smaller plants are replaced by larger ones, leading to a stable climax forest community. Now, it highlights that a climax community remains stable if the environment doesn't change. So, this stability is crucial, much like a well-established city that thrives as long as its infrastructure and resources remain consistent. Finally, a xerophytic habitat which is dry can transform into a mesophytic one which is more moderate. So, this transformation is similar to a desert gradually becoming a lush landscape, showing the dynamic nature of ecosystem over time. Okay, yeah, so even xerophytic habitat can get converted into a mesophytic one, becoming lush again. So it can become a lush landscape. Clear? Next question, what will be the P by R ratio of climax community and a pioneer community? What explanation would you offer for the changes seen in P by R ratio of a pioneer community and the climax community? So let's have a look at the answer. See, P by R means production by respiration ratio. So P by R ratio provides insight into the balance of energy within a community. When we talk about gross production, we are referring to the total amount of energy produced by the photosynthesis, while total community respiration is the energy used by all organisms. So, P by R ratio of 1 indicates a steady state community. This means that the energy produced is equal to energy consumed, suggesting a stable ecosystem. A P by R ratio can be measured over different time frames, such as daily or over longer periods. This flexibility allows ecologists to monitor changes and trends in ecosystem productivity and respiration, providing valuable insights into ecological health. Now let's look at what happens when the P by R ratio is not equal to 1. So if P by ratio is greater than 1, it means that organic matter is accumulating, indicating a growing or developing ecosystem. Conversely, if P by ratio is less than 1, organic matter is depleting, which would suggest stress or decline in the ecosystem. Now, these changes are critical for understanding the dynamics of the ecological succession. Here you can see difference between pioneer and the climax community. So pioneer community consists of the first species such as lichens on bare rocks or phytoplanktons in new water. Okay. So these lichens and you can see phytoplanktons, they colonize and they modify the environment, leading to a high production to respiration ratio, means P by R is greater than 1. But the stability is low. In contrast, the climax community is the final stable and self-sustaining biotic community that forms over time, representing a balance between production and respiration, means P by R ratio will be 1. And it features high species diversity and complex food webs. Now, the pioneer communities is temporary and less diverse, whereas the climax community is long-lasting and maintains equilibrium with its environment until a major disturbance occurs. So these are some of the differences between pioneer community and the climax community. Clear? So pioneer community, these are the first communities, and climax communities, okay, they are stable. They are self-sustaining biotic communities. And they have high diversity as well. They are occupied by several communities. Okay, with this we end this session. I hope all your concepts are clear now. So we will end this session now. Thank you very much for listening.